Let's move forward to see where you are now, and what is going on today, and take a look at events that you have probably been unaware of all along. Humans are no longer the major force attacking other humans. You now have to contend with an extremely emotional Mother Nature, and other forces you never realized existed, and have crept into the eyes of humanity at an immense speed. You may have heard doomsday stories about the end of the human species, and you may have run into people that claim the end is near. Well, the end is not near, it is here. And it began a decade ago. However, do not be afraid, be excited about the beginning that follows that you will be a part of. This is for real. However, again, this video is designed to show you where you really are, so you understand where you can go and live without fear, pain, death or separation again. This is not a fantasy, unfortunately your reality was the fantasy. You may have heard the rare story over the last decade of mass animal deaths. Well, when small media companies promote a small story here and there, you get a small glimpse, but when you put all the pieces across the world together, you see what has been happening over the last 12 months alone. You may be hearing of unbelievable events in the skies that have been occurring over only the last 18 months. Even recently, there was a mass sighting in Africa where the human species believed they were witnessing the apparition of what is called the Virgin Mary, being displayed in the sun. However, just under 100 years ago in 1918, almost 100,000 people witnessed a miracle in the sun, where even the journalists of the day reported the exact same visions of the Virgin Mary in the sun. This event was called the Miracle of Fatima. This tells you that the technology of today to create holograms existed long ago, but this technology is not of human design. Even recently this year in 2011, 1 million humans seen the images of the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus reflecting off of the moon. Well now, isn't that hologram beam project impressive? There is another miracle of the sun coming, one that is destined to impact every form of life within the environment of this world you inhabit now. I will get to this yet toward the end of the video. To keep in tune with human emotions, it is wise to save the best for last. In the meantime, better to recognize where you are now. The year is 2011, and there have been over 1,000 wars since the beginning of the Gregorian calendar. You can find the full list of wars at wikipedia.com list of wars. Wars between countries have involved hundreds of thousands to millions of people who were beaten, tortured, raped or murdered throughout these wars. Think on this, over 1,000 wars in 2,000 years, each war lasting between 2 and 20 years at a time. The tortures and rapes and murders are in the billions, so there has never been a single second in this world where the human species has not been demonically attacking each other somewhere. So, should we talk about the real reason for World War I and World War II? Should we talk about the real reasons behind the collapse of stock exchange companies throughout the world, and the Great Depressions that affected the world? Should we recognize that all horrors of the masses were strictly over a battle between those who controlled gold, and the challenging elite who controlled black gold, oil? Should we talk about the Second World War being financed by both groups of gold merchants, one group forming the International Monetary Fund in 1945 to regulate world gold, while the black gold merchants formed the United Nations in 1945 to control oil industry? Of course these two versions of world governance formed together with the end of the war in 1945. Coincidental timing? Speaking of coincidences, let's look into the patterns of coincidences we have all heard about throughout the world. Should we begin with Hitler, and the coincidence of the Americans promoting the death of Osama bin Laden, on May 1st, May Day, as they did by promoting the death of Hitler back on May Day of 1945? Should I explain to the Americans, how all 4 presidents who were supportive of ending slavery, were coincidentally assassinated thereafter? Should I explain how the last assassination of John Kennedy, was investigated solely by J. Edgar Hoover, the very man who imprisoned Martin Luther King, who was set free by John Kennedy? Should we talk about the final message from the American President Eisenhower, warning to beware of the grave implications surrounding a new formation of a military-industrial complex, that was not designed to engineer space, but underground cities? Should I mention that Osama bin Laden had something in common with Casper the Ghost, where both characters were a creation of the imagination? Should we talk about the famed 9/11 event, where as we all know, the president was innocently reading a book with black children in a school the moment the attack occurred? If a murder is being plotted, everyone involved looks for an innocent alibi, do they not? Should we talk about the very people who went to expose the conspiracies behind the events that took down the Twin Towers in New York, followed by the demolition of other World Trade Centers only hours later? Should we discuss all these whistleblowers that were suddenly accused of sex crimes or died by a freak accident of coincidence? Should we talk about the whistleblowers of the BP oil spill, who suddenly committed suicide or were found dead, or once again imprisoned for sex-related charges? Should we talk about the sex offender frame job, also now being exercised against the owner of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange? Is it a coincidence the government and media portrayed WikiLeaks as a non-reputable source, and now they have taken out the owner Julian Assange, and now CNN News refers to WikiLeaks as a source of value? Then again, should you trust the Constipated Nuisances Network, that offers propaganda and deceit with coverage of news from bullshitter, I mean Wolf Blitzer in the fabrication room, pardon me, the situation room? Newspapers also continue to feed the lies to the public, and I say it is a waste of paper. After all, the paper they use for printing their shit could also be simultaneously be put to better use as toilet paper, for humans to wipe shit. Now, should we also discuss all the evils that have occurred in China, including the famed Tiananmen Square protests of 1989? Should we talk about Nelson Mandela of Africa, who was tortured and beaten by police and prison guards, for trying to unite Africans and abolish slavery, to find freedom for the people? Why did Martin Luther King need to be beaten by police and prison guards for trying to establish equal rights for African Americans? The list goes on and on and on throughout history. Should we go back in time and talk about the authorities murdering Plato, or the authorities imprisoning Socrates? Seems as though the spiritual and freedom leaders of truth inside this world are attacked by military, by police, courthouses, prisons, governments, and of course, need we forget the media of the day? What does this tell you about the agents of deceit in this world? What about the name of a man who today is referred to as Jesus the Christ? Was he a fairy tale, or did humans make a fairy tale out of a real being? This is the question. What if the man who is incorrectly today promoted as Jesus the Christ was real, and he was not about saving the world, but condemning it for all the evils within the world? What if the being incorrectly called Jesus today really was from beyond this world, and what if the world suddenly knew the truth? What if all the lies falsified in Judaism, from all the Christians, Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholics and Mormons and alike, or those who also follow the scriptures of the Quran and Muslim faith, what if all religions were deceived? What if there is truth to the words spoken by the man called Jesus today, but humans are twisting the truth into lies? What if half of the world's population is really not from this world whatsoever, and these half are truly the lost sheep, the lost souls who entered from a world beyond and became lost in the darkness of this world of wars and corruptions? What if the fairy tale was true all along?